Hello YouTube divers, this is Waterdive 122 and I want to welcome you all to another episode of Magic Metal Mondays. Today we are going to be discussing another band, a whole new album from a genre that we've pretty much touched on in previous videos of this series. Today we are going to be reviewing another power metal album, but it's not from Halloween. No. Today we are going to be reviewing the debut album from one of the biggest power metal bands out there. We are going to be talking about Angel's Cry by Angra, released in 1993. Okay, so coming into this album, Angra was really one of those power metal bands that I wanted to at least dive right into with, because, as you all know, if you've been following me since the very start, you all know that I'm a huge Halloween fan. And really, they kind of pioneered the whole power metal movement, and all the power metal that I've heard outside of Halloween, I consider really great, even though it does kind of fall into the repetitiveness and the cheesy stuff and all that crap. A lot of stuff from European power metal, but neither here nor there. But what makes Angra unique is that they have the European sound, but they're the European power metal sound, rather, and they're from Brazil, which is really, really cool. Like, I always thought that Sepultura was like the biggest Brazilian band, but Angra, after listening to this album, Angra seriously challenges Sepultura as being the metal kings of Brazil. Because, honestly, this album, Angel's Cry, and I don't say this, and I don't usually praise debut albums that much, because, it's the first album, the band doesn't really have the ideas yet, they're just getting their feet wet to what's about to come. But here, Angra did awesomely. This is one of those exceptions where I believe that a band debuted the right way. Now, of course, this is the only album from Angra that I've heard so far. I have yet to listen to their other records, but I will get to the rest of their records, because this album, freaking amazing, from an amazing band. Angra, in my opinion, from this album alone, has grown to be one of my favorite metal bands. Now, let's see if they can keep that consistency going with their other records, but those are videos for another day. Maybe when I'm done listening to their full discography, I will do a album ranking for Angra. That will be fun. All right, so here we go. So Angel's Cry, the opening intro, is Unfinished Allegro, the first of 10 songs on the album. Even though this is not really an official song, it really just feels like an intro. And in my opinion, that's where I see a little bit of Halloween influence sprinkled into this album. And like I said earlier, Halloween was one of the main pioneers of power metal, and a lot of European power metal bands followed in their footsteps. I would say Halloween and Stratovarius were the two leading pioneers of the genre. On Halloween's albums, they usually, or at least on their earlier stuff, they had like a bunch of intros to set the mood, and the same is true here. The intro, Unfinished Allegro, is basically a take from the Unfinished Symphony, the Unknown Symphony, something like that. Like from one of its movements or something like that. I don't freaking remember. But it's a great symphonic track. Lots of horns, lots of strings, lots of great stuff. And in my opinion, I think it's these intros that might have influenced the outbreak of symphonic metal, which would be huge later on down the line. Alright, now getting back to the album, after Unfinished Allegro, you have an amazing song, amazing power metal track called Carry On, which is definitely my favorite track on the album. And it's fast, it's furious, it has kick-butt vocals by Fabio Ramiero or something like that, by Fabio. All I know is that his first name is Fabio, for that matter. He's the lead singer for Angra. He is absolutely amazing. He's got a great voice. So clean, especially in that upper octave range. It's just so good. And in my opinion, he's one of those very few singers who severely challenges Michael Kiske. Although I personally think that Michael Kiske is better, but, that's neither here nor there. Yeah, Carry On. I love the melody in that song. The guitar solos, yeah, you could argue they're a little bit too long. Like, this album, maybe a little bit too long, but still, the guitar solos are freaking amazing. And then you move on to the second track, Time, and it kind of slows down the momentum that you experienced on Carry On, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but, it just kind of loses that steam. But, if you kind of want the album to slow down, or otherwise you're going to probably just end up running on a treadmill all day. And then the momentum picks back up in the title track, Angels Cry, which is a freaking amazing song. It's one of the longer songs on the album, nearly touching 7 minutes, but it's still a great freaking power metal track. The singing by Fabio is just on another level. The instrumentation, the musicianship is just absolutely crazy. What more do you want me to say? And then we got another slower track, Stand Away, which is good. It's good. Lots of acoustic stuff. The ending is absolutely emotional. Like, honestly, if you're listening to this album at like the wrong time, like if you're feeling very sad and if you're listening to Stand Away, chances are you're gonna get a case of the waterworks, if you know what I mean. It's just that powerful. And then you get to another track, Never Understand, which is kind of a combination of slower stuff and then just generic power metal stuff. And it is, and if my memory serves me right, it is the longest track on the album, nearly 8 minutes long. In my opinion, it should not be this long. Like, it's a good song for what it is, but it just should not be this long, in my opinion. But neither here nor there. And next up, and same thing for the next track, Wuthering Heights, which is the most interesting track on the album. I will give them that, but in the end, when you look at the album and what you've experienced thus far, it just kind of feels like you're slowing down a little bit, if that makes sense, but not as much as Time or Stand Away. And then you get Streets of Tomorrow, which is just a freaking killer track. It is killer. Same thing with the last two songs, Evil Warning and Lasting Child. Lasting Child is another one of my favorite tracks on the album. It's just killer. Evil Warning is kind of like where power metal meets hard rock, and it's a perfect blend. It's a perfect marriage between those two genres. It just feels great. And then with Streets of Tomorrow, it's probably the track that is the least memorable to me, but it's still a great song nonetheless. And there you have it. We've reached the entire album. Now, the main thing that this album struggles with, in my opinion, is consistency. And honestly, a lot of debut albums, in my opinion, are rather inconsistent. That's why that's one of the biggest reasons why I give debut albums so much flack on this channel. Because, it's like I always say, it's the first album, the band does not have their ideas stretched out yet. They're still very young. They can make better albums. And really with the amount of consistency is, in my opinion, Angels Cry's biggest weakness. But that is a very minor weakness, in my opinion, because this album still works as it is. And that's why I'm going to give this album a solid 9 out of 10. If this album was a little bit more consistent, in my opinion, it would have gotten a 10 out of 10. The album itself the album is a great way to kick off a career, especially if you're a power metal band like Angra. And before we leave, I'm gonna touch on another issue that this album has. It is a little bit too long. It's around like 55 minutes long or something like that. Some of the songs, in my opinion, could be trimmed, like cut down some of the guitar solos down just a little bit, and we'll be good. Um, Especially on songs like "Wuthering Heights" or "Never Understand," and even on "Carry On." That solo just feels like it continues to drag on and on and on. Not necessarily a bad thing. It is just, it can get a little bit grasping at times. And I feel like that's one of the main issues that a lot of metalheads have with power metal, because it's very repetitive, it's very over the top, it's very cheesy at times. But it just depends on which album you listen to in my books. Like, now there are some bands who are just completely repetitive, like Dragon Force, like Glory Hammer, and like a lot of other modern power metal bands. But the earlier power metal bands, like Helloween, like Stratovarius, like even Ed Guy, and like freaking and like Angra for that matter, Camelot, Blind Guardian, you name it. All the early power metal bands, in my opinion, basically set the stage for what these modern power metal bands are gonna do. Um, but overall, Angels Cry, one of the best debut albums I've ever heard, and it's kind of weird that this album was Angra's debut, because it really feels like that Angra, excuse me, it really feels like that Angra has been doing this for a long time, even before this album came out. That's how great this album is. But yeah, consistency and a little bit too long of a song of an album length are my only two gripes with it. But it still gets a solid 9 out of 10. It would get a 10 out of 10 if those two things were just resolved a little bit. But neither here nor there. I will continue to listen to the Angra catalog, and then very soon we will be doing an Angra album rankings here on Magic Metal Mondays. So stay in touch for that. But fantastic singing, fantastic musicianships, brilliant songwriting. The album cover is awesome as well. This is a great album. Go check it out if you haven't already. Okay, and that concludes the album review. But the video is not over yet, because I do have one announcement to make. And I posted a short on this the other day. I will be doing a live stream for the first time on my channel next Friday at 6:30 Eastern Time. Yeah, Eastern Standard Time for that matter. So basically on that live stream, you can ask me polite questions, maybe about music, about me personally, about basically anything you want. But just make sure it is YouTube friendly and all, and all that crap. But yeah, I will be going live on YouTube next Friday at 6:30 Eastern Time. So I hope you all will join me. And if you can't make it, that's totally fine. I understand. So with that said, that concludes this edition of Magic Metal Mondays. Thank you so much for watching, my fellow YouTube divers. This is WaterDive 122 signing out, ready to dive into more fun on YouTube. Thanks for watching.